Welcome to Tangled Roots, Stories Navigating Youth and Family Systems. Brought to you by the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Child, Youth, and Family Mental Health, NTAC. Schools, juvenile justice courts, and child welfare services can be daunting for children and caregivers. New environments, unfamiliar instructions, and the need to trust new people can feel overwhelming. In this podcast series, we hear from those who've navigated these tangled roots through different systems. Each episode shares real-life experiences of youth, young adults, and families who experienced trauma or living with mental health needs. Our storytellers include individuals from various backgrounds, offering unique insights into their journeys through these complex systems. In today's episode, Jason will share his powerful and deeply personal journey from a childhood marked by trauma and abuse to his transformative experiences in and out of the criminal justice system. His story sheds light on the challenges faced by many and the resilience required to overcome them. Please be advised that this episode includes discussions of physical abuse. We encourage listeners to prioritize their well-being and seek support if needed.
My name is Jason, and I'm the founder and CEO of Free World. My life's mission is to end mass incarceration. Part of that reason is because I've been personally impacted by the criminal justice system myself. And like many other kids who have entered a criminal justice setting, I also came from a background of poverty, trauma, and abuse. You see, my parents were immigrants who came to this country with absolutely nothing. We were extraordinarily poor growing up, and my dad used to take out his stress and anger on me as his personal punching bag. When I was young, he used to beat me often. Sometimes when it got really bad, he used to strip me naked, throw me on the floor, and stomp on me. When it got really bad, he used to chase me around the kitchen with a butcher knife, trying to kill me. By the age of 10, I had already attempted suicide 3 times because I felt so lost, alone, and angry at the world. At 13, I ended up joining a gang because the gang represented the family that I didn't have at home, and the gang leader represented the father figure that I didn't have. That led me to being arrested for a first-degree felony, aggravated robbery, at the age of 15, and they sentenced me to a 12-year sentence in prison. They sent me to a juvenile prison, which housed about 6,000 kids between the ages of 10 years old and 20 years old. And one of the first things that I noticed when I went into the prison and looked across a sea of faces is how many other people were minorities, just like me. And how many of these other kids came from poor, traumatic childhood experiences, just like me. As I got to know other inmates and learn more about their stories, I also started to realize that so many of us didn't really see a future for ourselves. We would constantly see kids who would get released only to come right back, or would hear about kids getting released only to hear about them getting shot and killed on the streets. Was this going to be my future? Was I going to be trapped in the cycle of going in and out of prison? Or would I end up being killed at a young age after getting released? One of the ways that I was able to really develop a new pathway for myself is because of my mom. My mom, when I was growing up, used to never stand up for me whenever I was getting beat by my father. And I used to hate her for that. But when I went to prison, I saw another side to my mom, and I started to really understand what a mother's love actually meant. You see, my mom used to drive 14 hours every single weekend just to come visit me in prison for 2 hours. And during those visitations, we would really talk and get to understand each other and to understand the traumatic events that led up to the situation that we were currently in. And what she shared was that when I was younger, she was also afraid of my dad. And that's why she didn't stand up for me whenever I was being beat. She used to say that even though you're physically in prison, mentally and emotionally, I'm in prison with you. And she always encouraged me, saying that no matter what happens, remember, you're a good person. You just simply made a mistake. That doesn't define you for who you are. And so it was because of my mom that I had the strength and pathway to figure out a different future for myself. About midway through my sentence, the media found out that correctional officers were sexually and physically abusing kids under their care. And as the media began to investigate more and more about these different cases of abuse happening in these facilities, they started to realize that this was widespread and that there were thousands of cases of abuse that were happening over decades at these different facilities. And so the prison agency suddenly became embattled in a huge scandal. And the governor of Texas at the time appointed an independent ombudsman, Will Harrell, to investigate all of these different claims. At that same time, my mom had really encouraged me to use education as a pathway to changing my life. And so while I was incarcerated, she used to send me books and mail, and she even used to send me math homework. And when she came to visitation, she would test me on the math homework just to make sure that I was doing it. And so it's because of my mom's encouragement that I started setting up GED classes and college prep classes. I was even teaching Bible study classes at the time. And so when the facilities were under the scandal, they ended up allowing me an opportunity to testify in front of the Texas State Senate on my thoughts on criminal justice reform and my experiences as an inmate in these facilities. That led me to meeting Will Harrell, and Will Harrell ended up introducing me to Tracy Levins, who is a dear friend and mentor in my life. And together we worked on a number of different criminal justice reform efforts to improve conditions within juvenile facilities, as well as develop future rehabilitation curriculum that students could use to benefit in the future. Because of these efforts, I ended up being released early, and I was given a full scholarship to the University of Texas at Dallas, where I earned a double master's. But even with two master's degrees, I found that it was very difficult to find a job due to my criminal history. And at times, I grew really, really dejected and depressed. Some of the supports that were helpful for me whenever I was released is the fact that I had a strong family environment to go home to. By this point, our family still wasn't doing super well financially, but my mom still had a safe home for me to come home to. And throughout the entire time that I was incarcerated, she really showed how much she loved me and was invested in my success. And so I had a strong motivating factor. First of all, I didn't want to disappoint my mom. But second of all, I was also on parole for 9 years. And so I didn't want to do anything after I was released to go back to prison. I also surrounded myself with a really strong community of positive friends. And I've been told you are the average of your five closest friends. And so the people that I was associating myself with were all people who were, striving to better their lives, either through work, education, or whatever it may be, that they really found that was important to their family and their values. It's because of all these different support structures that I was able to end up starting a nonprofit called Free World. Free World is a nonprofit that trains and places people with criminal histories for living wage careers in the trucking industry. We believe that poverty is the leading cause for why people go to prison and return to prison. We've developed a program where we help people reach economic mobility by training them for these careers in trucking.
Thank you for listening to Jason's powerful story on Tangled Roots, Stories Navigating Youth and Family Systems. We hope Jason's journey underscores the profound impact that a supportive and loving figure like his mother can have, even in the darkest of times. His story also highlights the importance of having positive support systems as individuals transition out of challenging circumstances, such as juvenile justice. Remember, taking care of yourself is essential after hearing such intense stories. If this episode brings up strong feelings or distress, we encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional, a trusted friend, or any of the resources listed in the show notes for support. For more information on evidence-based practices and strategies to enhance child and family mental health, please refer to the show notes. Stay tuned for more episodes in our series, and visit the NTAC website to learn about upcoming events and learning opportunities. At NTAC, we believe all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. We promote access to evidence-based and community-driven solutions while uplifting diverse voices through inclusive trainings and resources. We are dedicated to creating spaces for providers and community leaders to gather, learn, share insights, and build a national support network. This podcast is supported by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, as part of the Financial Assistance Award SM-20008 National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Child, Youth, and Family Mental Health Cooperative Agreement. The information and content are those of the podcast guests and do not represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by SAMHSA, HHS, or the U.S. government.